Now to Decision, Georgia. In less than 2 hours, the polls will open for the twin Senate runoff election. It is a high-stakes race. The entire nation watching the Peach State closely today to see who comes out on top. These races will determine which party controls the Senate. On the ballot, incumbent Republican Senators Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue facing Democrats Reverend Raphael Warnock and Jon Ossoff. Our team of reporters are fanned out across the metro with everything you need to know for this election day. We begin with Jerry Carnes in Fulton County, the state's most populous county, with a look at the projected voter turnout for today. Jerry?
Well, good morning, Sheba. We've got a couple of voters who have shown up this morning here at the C.T. Martin Recreation Center in Fulton County. They'll, of course, wait for the polls to open at 7 a.m. Fulton election officials tell us that they anticipate as many as 150,000 voters may show up countywide this morning. That is already in addition to the 370,000 who have already voted either by mail or during early voting. Fulton election officials point out there were 4 fewer days of early voting when compared to November. They believe that cut into the early voting numbers, and it's why they believe there will be a heavier crowd today than what they saw on November 3rd. Fulton Election Chief Richard Barron has prepared for today in the face of continuing claims of voter irregularities back in November, claims the Secretary of State's office has called baseless and false.
We are just going to continue to conduct the elections in compliance with the law. And we know that there's been a great deal of misinformation out there that's been circulated. We don't have the resources to respond to each one of these.
The Fulton election officials tell us that since November, they've received angry phone calls and even death threats. So there will be security officers on hand at all 254 polling locations here in Fulton County.
All right, that's good to know, Jerry. Thank you. Our team coverage continues now with Joe Ripley live in Gwinnett County with a look at the expectations there for voter turnout. Joe.
Well, no voters yet here at the First United Methodist Church in Lawrenceville, one of 150 plus locations for voting here in Gwinnett County. But we are starting to get a first glimpse of poll workers, electoral workers here. We'll have a long day ahead of them starting, of course, at 7 this morning. Election officials I spoke with earlier this week tell me that they are predicting turnout overall to rival that of the November 3rd election. So here's what we're dealing with. Officials saying early voting numbers in the runoff were slightly down from the general election in November, but still extremely high and way above normal for a typical election. Nearly 260,000 people have voted early here in Gwinnett County, either in person or absentee by mail. An average of 407,000 people total voted in the Senate races back in November. Gwinnett had around 71% turnout then. This time around, Hispanic voter turnout could make a difference. According to data from the Secretary of State's office, Gwinnett County has close to 55,000 registered Hispanic voters, something we're watching there, as well as the turn from red to blue here in Gwinnett County. The Democrats making it a primary stop in their canvassing around Georgia. Vice President-elect Kamala Harris campaigned here in Gwinnett County when she visited Georgia. So all things we are watching for. Coming up next hour, you will hear from some first-time voters who could also make an impact here in Gwinnett as well.
A popular county for the vice president-elect. Joe, thank you. Our team coverage continues now in Spalding County with Mara Sirianni. Spalding had a number of issues on Election Day, as we may recall here, Mara.
It did, and so we're here at Union Baptist Church this morning. This is just one of the precincts, and really across their county, they're hoping to not have any issues like we saw, Sheba, like you said, back in November for the general election. Spalding County certainly had its fair share of drama, and Secretary of State Raffensperger even called for the election supervisor out here in Spalding to resign. Now, she did not, but I want to take you back to that day briefly, because if you're a Spalding County voter, you'll remember voting was halted for 2 hours that morning, and it caused a lot of frustration. Marcia Ridley, she's the election supervisor here. She initially said the Dominion machine sent an update the night before. Well, she was then slammed by Ravensburger, who said the problem stemmed from management issues and poor decision making. And he said that Ridley spread false information about the machines. Now, she again did not step down, and she denies any wrongdoing, and the incident is being investigated. Meanwhile, this is a county where President Trump won 59-39, beating Joe Biden. It's a heavily Republican leading county, so we'll see what happens today. They're hoping that problems of the past don't plague this election day morning.
All right, we shall see. Mara, thank you. Voter turnout has already set a record for this runoff election. More than 3 million Georgians have cast their ballots, making up nearly 40% of all registered voters in the state. Christy Diaz continues our team coverage at the 11 Alive Bridge with a closer look at voter turnout county by county.
Sheba, those 3 million voters, that's already 1 million more than everyone who voted back in 2008. That was 2.1 million. And this 39.3%, that's about a third of all registered voters in the state who have already voted. So let's take a look county by county. This map right here, all this data was compiled by the U.S. Elections Project from the University of Florida. So if we tap on Fulton County here, it shows you 42.4% of voters in Fulton County have already voted. I want to look at Fayette County, though, because Fayette County is interesting. 49.3, almost half of the voters in Fayette County have already voted. And that county is interesting because in the primary, they voted heavily for Perdue, but then they flipped blue and voted for Warnock in that race. So I want to show you up here, too. It breaks it down based on in-person early votes. You see the lighter blue color. The darker the shade of blue, the more people have voted. So in person, those numbers aren't quite as high as what we see in the mail-in ballots. See how it turned to that dark blue? That means way more people have voted by mail early so far. But today, of course, is going to be the big game changer when we see people vote in person once polls open at 7 o'clock. So we'll be watching a lot of these counties, specifically Fayette in the metro. That's one that flipped blue. Floyd and Polk up here, we'll be watching all of that. Fannin and some of the middle county Georgias too, who already have almost half of the voters already cast their vote. Sheba.
All right, Christy, our county by county election expert at this point. We appreciate you. You'll find much more on election 2020 on our website, 11alive.com. Everything you need to know about voting. Plus, we fact check those political ads you've been seeing over the past few months.